I bet.
Welcome to Real Talk, Real Change. I'm Adina Tatum, joined by Councilmember Tyler Morton. This is the space where we have honest conversations about how local government impacts our everyday lives, the challenges, the opportunities, and the real people behind the decisions. Today, we're diving into something that will shape Lexington's future for decades, the Lexington Preservation and Growth Management Program, or LPGMP. It's a plan to make sure we grow responsibly, balance preservation with development, and use data instead of guesswork when making decisions.
And to help us unpack it, we're joined by our very own Vice Mayor Dan Wu. Not only has he been at the table for these big conversations, he's also passionate about making sure residents have a voice in how Lexington evolves. We'll talk about what LPGMP is, why it matters, how you can get involved, plus we'll have a little fun along the way.
Vice Mayor Wu, welcome, first of all. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So we'll jump right in there because we know you are a busy man, and ask you if you can explain how Lexington Preservation and Growth Management Program, LPGMP, what it is and why Lexington needs programs like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And we came up with the longest acronym we could think of. So
Yeah.
as many letters as we can cram in there. To kind of set the stage for this, we kind of have to go all the way back to 1958. Lexington was the first in the nation to establish an urban service area. And the reason they did that back in the day was to really determine what parts of our county were going to be served by urban services. So everything from trash pickup to sidewalks to street lights to fire and police, all of that stuff. In the intervening decades, it's become probably our most contentious issue in Lexington, in Fayette County, is land use. And so the conversation has shifted in the last few decades into this sort of a binary about development versus preservation, right? Because of the urban service area, we have probably one of the most unique urban-rural landscapes of any mid-sized city in America. I always say that you can start downtown Lexington, drive 15 minutes in any direction, and suddenly it doesn't look like you're in a city anymore. It looks like horse farms and rolling hills and black fences, right? And that's really unique. We don't have the kind of suburban sprawl that you would see in a Nashville or Cincinnati or any other city our size. But what that has brought is also this tension about what it means to grow as a city. We are growing population every single year, right? So the question becomes, where do all these people live? Where do all these people work? And so there's this great tension between, do we expand the urban service area, which means moving into agricultural land, horse farms, et cetera? Do we do infill redevelopment, which is within our urban service area or USA, or do we do both? And for years and years, we never really had anything data and needs driven to kind of guide that. So it's been honestly just political.
Yeah.
The last major expansion we had was back in 1996. We expanded by about 5,000 acres. And literally we didn't expand in any major way for 27 years until I got onto council in 2023, and the council voted to expand another 2,800 acres. So to me, that's not a system that works, where we just don't expand, and then feel this sort of growth and development pressure to where we suddenly expand by thousands of acres. And during that time, we were doing the city's comprehensive plan, goals and objectives update. And I personally wasn't opposed to the expansion specifically. I was opposed to the idea of doing an expansion, but not having it based on data and need. And so I really thought that we were putting the cart before the horse. The expansion happened, the votes came down that way, but I wanted to make sure that we put into our comp plan what would become the framework for LPGMP, because I think going forward, we have to get out of this binary of expand or don't expand, and we have to create a system that is data-driven and needs-driven to look at what does our growth look like, not just for the next 2, 3, 5 years, but for the next 20 and 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So
I mean, hold on just 1 second. I'm going to let you get to your question. But like off topic here, I just want to see if you'd be interested in like reading a book that I give you, because your voice is coming off very like commercial, and it's very nice. I feel like I could listen to you read a book and it would be.
Listen, I used to be a college radio DJ.
That's what I'm
and
saying.
I've
It's
done
giving.
4 different podcasts. So
There you go.
this is my zone right here.
Okay.
This is my area.
There it goes. There it goes.
And then before you ask your question, I'm sorry.
ahead.
Before you ask your
We
question,
know who the boss is.
no, because I think that it's interesting how you said the growth started in 1996, and you said they did like how many acres?
In 96, they expanded the USA by 5,000 acres.
So 5,000 acres, and then we come to 2023, and you have this huge expansion because really, if you picture it, we're like growing and blowing up out of Lexington and growing out of Lexington, and we have so many people coming to Lexington to work and live because it is a great place to live.
That's right.
But with waiting so long, it's really put us in a housing crisis, right? So even like agreeing to do that big expansion, we're still behind.
Yes. So I want to make sure that we're not talking like direct cause and effect.
Right.
Right. I don't think it was us not expanding our USA for 27 years that put us in this housing crisis. The housing crisis is a national phenomenon, and it, I've been reading a lot of great books about like housing and abundance, and one of the things that it's historic. It goes all the way back to World War II and kind of the way we started reconfiguring our relationship with housing, that it wasn't just a place to raise our family, it became an investment tool. And that changed the game entirely. So now people are buying houses not just for themselves to live in, but as a way to, build wealth and stash their money, right? The other part is the last couple of decades in America, all over America, we have not been building at the rate that we should. So we are behind simply on just housing stock. Currently in Lexington, Fayette County, we're 23,000 housing units short. And the majority of those are affordable housing units, right? Defined as 80% or lower of area median income. So it's not just an us problem, and it's certainly not just a we don't have enough land or we didn't expand problem. But we have a unique sort of set of challenges here, the way that cities who don't have urban service areas don't have that same sort of challenge. They can just kind of keep growing out. And we are, I think, much more thoughtful and considerate about how do we preserve that balance, right? I don't think anybody wants to wipe out all of our agricultural land and turn us into, a Nashville, right? But I also don't think anybody, hopefully, is saying we don't want to grow at all. All these people trying to move here for jobs, they can go find somewhere else to live. That's not the right attitude either.
Right.
Is it my time now?
It is. I'm so sorry.
All right. So in that same tune, in which as the folks listen probably know now, this is a very broad topic, and it's more than just making a decision, expand or not. It's more into it. So can you talk about what and why? Why was it important to create a data-driven process for managing growth rather than relying on opinions or guesswork, or just doing it when the time needs? I mean, just like recently in 2023, just doing it.
Yeah. It really, in our job, it's so hard to take the politics out of anything because everything is political in one way or another. But I don't think the way we made the decision to expand in 2023, and I can't speak for how they made their decision in 96. What I do know is even in 96, they also didn't have a process, which is what we're trying to build now. So a lot of it had to be political. A lot of it had to be the pressures from the development community, from residents, from other folks to say, like, we don't have enough land and we need to expand. Even that question of we don't have enough land is controversial, right?
Yeah.
There will be folks on the preservation side who say we have plenty of land inside the USA. Why aren't we doing more infill? Why aren't we taking a deeper look at vacant lots, underutilized land, or land that was expanded in 96 and was never built on? So literally, there's parts of those 5,000 acres that 27 years later, almost 30 years later, that we haven't built on. So why aren't we doing that? And so again, it becomes this either-or conversation. And what I would love to see LPGMP put us in is a new frame of mind of a yes and. We absolutely need to do infill, and infill is really, really important to me. And how do we do infill, right? You've talked on mic in the past about gentrification and displacement, right? How do we infill in an equitable way that we're not pushing residents out, we're not changing the entire sort of fabric of a neighborhood because we can, because a new landowner came in and bought up that parcel. There's a real delicate balance there too. Here's the way I think about it. If we were to somehow magically use up every inch of land within the USA and maximize it, and by maximize, I'm not just talking about underutilized or empty land. I'm talking about surface parking lots.
Right.
I mean, you look at our downtown, we have so many surface parking lots. That's such a terrible use of space in our downtown when we need retail, we need residential, right? And instead, this block is parking, 40 cars when it could be housing a couple hundred residents and shops as well. But let's say we magically, beautifully used up all of our infill land. At some point, we will still need to increase the size of our urban service area, right? At some point, that's going to get maxed out as our population growth, and we have to talk about that. So, again, I think having it driven by data, by a needs study that we're going to do every 5 years or so, I think depoliticizes it as much as possible so that if I or any other council member or anybody else says, hey, we need to expand the urban service area, well, based on what? Well, based on this study that we just did that says we need it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like we want our decisions to be backed by science and by math and by facts.
Right. Right. And input, I'm assuming, from the community that is living in these areas as well, right?
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. The input issue is really, really interesting and really, really complicated, I think, because you take, a zone change hearing, for example. That's a really acute example of when communities clash.
Yeah.
A zone change in a historically black neighborhood like St. Martin's Village or Pearltown over by campus or really anywhere. You have neighborhoods, existing neighborhoods or neighborhood associations, folks coming out and saying, we don't want our neighborhood changed in any way. We don't want our dead ends or stub streets, connected because it's going to increase traffic. They have safety concerns. We don't want, a taller building than the rest of our neighborhood. And the flip side of that being, we desperately need housing. We desperately need some, what I like to call gentle density or missing middle housing, right? Duplexes, fourplexes, small apartments. Nobody right now is proposing that we build a 20-story high-rise in the middle of a subdivision or in the middle of a neighborhood, right? So that's not even what we're talking about. But even some of this gentle density will get opposition from neighborhoods too. So how do you balance that? Do you come down on the side of folks who already have a house and are trying to preserve what they have? Or do you come down on the side of folks who very often aren't in the room? The people that we're building this housing for, they're not in the room. They don't know that this housing is for them. They may currently be in Tennessee or California, for all we know, who may be moving to Lexington for a job, right? That's the future. So the preservation of the present and the past versus the building of the future. There's a lot of tension there, and that's the space where we as decision makers live, is right in that tension, getting pushed and pulled by our constituents in directions and trying to figure out what's best for everybody or what's best for the most people, right?
Yeah.
I had a question, but Vice Mayor Wu already hit on it with the answer, so we'll keep going.
We'll keep going, but I want to just share a joke that I say about vacant parking lots because it is crazy how many vacant parking lots there are downtown. And I always said when I worked in bridal, I was like, I'm gonna get a venue because that's where the money's at. I'm gonna get a parking lot because that's where the money's at. It's gonna be very hard for people to give up those spaces because they are making just passive income renting those spaces out for parking downtown. It is crazy just to go see a movie, what you got to pay to park in a lot. We need to do something about that. I don't know how that goes.
And if you tie it into sort of other issues that we have in the city, right? Some of the shootings that we've had in Lexington, in downtown, have been late at night in these surface parking lots where people are gathering, right? So I'm obviously not blaming a parking lot for violence that we have, but it's another issue that's tied together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like something we talk about with youth development and youth programming. If they have something to do that is keeping them busy and occupied and they're not in a space that's like no security, nothing is not being really utilized for anything, nobody's paying attention to it. Yeah, things like that can happen. So kind of like a fun question we have. When you think about Lexington's growth, what's your dream project you love to see come to life in the city, or could be practical or something just
Yeah.
off the cuff?
So I live over near Southland Drive and Lafayette High School, and over there on Southland Drive from Nicholasville all the way up to Rosemont is kind of this commercial strip, right? And it's not super fancy, it's not super high
Nope.
end, and there are not a lot of chain stores. There's a lot of local businesses like Good Foods Co-op, like Critchfield's, like Southland Bagel, all these places, and it's all within walking distance because it's surrounded by residential areas, right? Meadowthorpe is similar in that way. Chevy Chase is similar in that way. We have the model already existing in Lexington for these sort of very walkable, more integrated neighborhoods where you really can hit a good percentage of your daily like services that you need,
Yeah.
whether it's getting your nails done or laundry or groceries, but you still have tons and tons, even more areas in town where it's just big suburban, blocks where you have to like wind your way out of the
Yeah.
subdivision and then drive another few miles to the big shopping center at Tate's Creek or in Hamburg or at Fayette Mall, right? I would love to see us having more of those sort of town center, village center models. I just want to see all of Lexington, all residents in Lexington be able to walk 15 minutes to most of their services.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. It would get us out of our cars. It's a sustainability issue. It's a physical health issue. It's a mental health issue. It becomes an economic equity issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Transportation
absolutely.
issue. So rather than one dream project, that's my dream for Lexington, is
Yeah.
to kind of have that vibe.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I kind of grew up in areas like that, so my kids are fortunate enough to live in an area where they can walk and get to places too
That's right.
easily. So,
So let's move on. We'll move on to how it works. So the first question is then, what is the urban service area, and how does LPGMP help guide decisions about when and how to expand?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about kind of the concept of the urban service area. So the way that we're framing this in a data and needs-driven manner is every 5 years. So right now, by state statute, we have to kind of review our comprehensive plan and goals and objectives every 5 years. We did that in 23, we'll do it again in 28, 33, 38, et cetera. What happened in 2023 was that the expansion conversation just overtook the entire comp plan conversation, and that happens almost every time. We want to kind of separate out the study about land availability, separated from our comp plan. So our next comp plan is in 28, and we would like to, a year or two after that, basically do a study, a housing needs study, that basically says, based on our growth trends right now, we will need X number of housing units by 20 years from now, right? And then there are ways in the formula to kind of extrapolate how many people live in each housing unit, et cetera, and then how much land does that occupy. So basically the question becomes, every 5 years we ask ourselves the question, in 20 years, will we have enough land to satisfy the housing need? Or rather, how many years of land do we have? So if the answer, and the threshold is 20, so if the answer is we have 22 years worth of land, then we're good to go. We don't need to talk about the expansion issue, right? But what we will have is, and that'll go before the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will then come back to the council with recommendations of potential policies or approvals or zoning changes that we could make to make things better. If they identify, for example, that we only have 18 years of land left, that means we have a gap. So then the Planning Commission will also first look at policy and procedural and legislative or approval or zoning changes that they will recommend to us to look at first. So we're shifting the focus on, let's look at infill first. Okay? So that we're not automatically just kind of knee-jerk reaction to, oh, we don't have enough land, let's open up the USA. But when we don't have enough land, that will open up the conversation to potentially expand the urban service area. I want to be clear about one thing. Nothing in this process triggers anything. it's not a case of, oh, we need 20 years of land, we only have 18, then we'll definitely
Yeah.
do X, Y, or Z. Nothing triggers it. What it starts is the conversation and the possibility of it. And so now when we as council members or planning commission make these sort of decisions, we can say this is backed by data. We have the numbers here. And the folks that are going to be doing the study every 5 years is not us. It's going to be an independent organization or through University of Kentucky. That hasn't been all settled yet. Everything I'm saying also is in the draft ordinance proposal, right? So nothing is set in stone. We're literally working this out. In September, we'll be presenting it, hearing from the public, and then keep tweaking and hopefully have a final draft in December.
So I got to follow up, and this is just devil's advocate. So, and maybe you can answer, maybe not. So I know that in the last expansion, a lot of folks were saying, well, we have all this area that hadn't been developed, and that was in the previous expansion area and things like that. So in this process, we know that that land is essentially private property, and the private property owner has a discretion if they want to develop it or not.
That's right.
Depending when they so choose. So in this newer process, what if there is land available, but that private property owner is like, well, I don't want to develop it yet.
Yeah.
Is there something that kind of is going to address that?
Yeah, so we're trying to build in the idea of a look back. That when we do the math of how much land do we have versus how many housing units we need, we're going to calculate into that how much land is undeveloped or underutilized. Now, that's really, really tricky, right? Because somebody could say, oh, I have a development plan it's in your planning department, but maybe they filed it 7 years ago, right? So how do we measure intent versus action, right? Or, I'm doing some like real basic stuff, but you've had the option to develop that from 12 years ago and there's still no movement on it, right? So how do we kind of light a fire under folks? What does that look like? Is it a carrot or a stick? Is it an incentive for you to develop the thing that you said you wanted to develop? Or is it a deterrent or a stick where we say, well, if you're going to keep this plot of land like this, we're going to raise your property taxes, right? And I'm not suggesting that, but just kind of thinking out loud, right? How do you get people to kind of move in the direction that the city needs to go? And unfortunately, whether you're in an expansion area or not, there are plenty of folks who own land who are just sitting on it.
Yeah.
They're waiting to speculate. They're waiting for the values to go up even higher so they can make more money, or they just don't want to do anything with it because it's their land, right? In no way can we as local government force people to do X, Y, or Z, right? We can only incentivize or penalize. And so if I raise your taxes or raise your fees over something you aren't doing, and you can take that hit, keep sitting on it. You know what I mean? We still can't force you to do it.
Yeah.
We can give you as many incentives as we want to encourage you to do housing or affordable housing. You don't have to take it, right? So everybody still has the freedom to do what they need to do. But I think we need to kind of build in better systems so that we're not caught up in this whole conversation of like, oh, we're going to expand the urban service area and encroach into agricultural zones, and meanwhile we have this underutilized,
Right.
Land in the city core, right? So there's the idea of taking the look back and potentially pulling stuff out of the urban service area. That's also real tricky because you're not going to do it in the middle of the urban core. We're not going to create a donut,
Yeah.
right? We're not going to create suddenly like everything's covered by the urban service area except this
Yeah.
little circle. Can't really do it. You can only do it at the edges. So none of this is easy,
Yeah.
right? But we're really, really trying to figure this out. And I think with everything that we do legislatively, I always want to tell people whatever we're putting out is not going to be perfect. It just simply won't be, right?
Right.
We're going to do it. We're going to see what works and doesn't work, and we can always tweak it.
Fair enough.
Right. So we talked about the first urban service, well, maybe not the first, but in 2023, second. So this would have been the second expansion, right?
Not the second ever.
Okay.
It's the second
recent.
It's the most recent big expansion since '96. They've done various expansions from year one, from 1958 on.
Yeah.
And they've even actually a couple times retracted. I think they expanded I don't remember when this was, like by several thousand acres, and then realized like they went too far and
Okay.
then drew it back. So we've been doing it, and even between 96 and 2023, we've done smaller, couple dozen, couple hundred acres, but this has been the first major one in almost a generation.
Yeah. So people may wonder, like, didn't we just expand the USA or urban
Yeah.
service boundary?
Yeah.
How does LPGMP build on that decision and keep us planning responsibly for the future?
Yes. So after the expansion decision was made in 2023, they came up with an urban growth master plan that's been approved and pushed through. And that basically guides, now that we've determined how much land we're expanding and where that land's going to be. It's in kind of 3 pockets at the edge of town, 2 kind of on the east side, and then 1 over on the west side. So we've come up with the master plan sort of guidelines about what we want that to look like. And I talked about the idea of village centers and town centers earlier. That's a big part of how we want to move forward. It's so hard to change what an existing neighborhood or area looks like, right? Because it's very rare that one landowner is going to come in and buy up a whole swath and redo it, right? But it's much easier when we have undeveloped land to then say, what do we want it to look like? What kind of city do we want to be? Do we want to be a walkable city with a lot of tree cover, right? And transportation nearby? Do we want mixed use? Do we want mixed income? All those things, we can kind of build that into these guidelines for new areas. To address your question about the recent expansion and how it relates to this, in 2023, this is, I'm just a couple of months into my job. We're thrown into budget season that you've just gone through, and we're also thrown into comp plan. And so the 6 new council members, we were just literally like learning about the thing while figuring out, do we have an opinion on this and what do we want to change about it? And we built into that comp plan update a lot of great things relating to equity, relating to sustainability.
Yeah.
But again, the oxygen got sucked out of the room from the expansion. So the expansion vote didn't go the way I would have wanted it to. But looking back now, I realize if we were trying to build this process, this LPGMP process right now, and we hadn't done that expansion, there would be a huge layer of pressure on this process to go one way or another because people were still feeling that pressure of like, well, we really need land, we really need land. Having done it, it actually relieves that tension to give us space to work on this project.
Yeah.
So this might just be me being, making lemonade out of lemons, but I think it is true that even though we did put the cart before the horse, now we can really work on the horse. I don't know, train the horse, but
Get that horse back in front of the cart.
yeah, exactly, for the future, right? This doesn't apply to anything we just did,
Yeah.
last year, the year before. This applies towards everything moving forward. So again, for those who might have the fear of like, oh, you're building this process so you can like just keep expanding every year.
Yeah.
It's like, first of all, it's not every year.
Right.
Second of all, we literally just expanded. So let's work on those 2,800 acres. Let's get them developed.
Yeah.
If we were to, I can't remember who gave me this number, if we were to fully maximize that land, that potentially could be 20,000 housing units.
Wow.
That could get us caught up, right? Is that likely to happen?
No.
Probably not. Is
No.
that likely to happen in a timely fashion? Probably not.
No.
And I say timely not to be critical, but housing just takes so long. There's so many procedural application approval processes, there's zone changes, and then there's the actual building of it. So anytime, even if I waved a magic wand and allowed certain kinds of housing, it would be years and years down the road before we really see it, right?
Yeah.
But which makes it really important that we get this stuff right, because this is going to apply to housing starting in 2030 and beyond.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna steal Adina's question because it's on the top of my head, but it's actually something into the next question, so I'm gonna lead into it. So it goes to what kind of community goals, such as housing, job growth, sustainability, or walkability, can LPGMP help prioritize? But before we dive into that, I kind of want to go to just back to 2023, the main arguments of expanding the boundary. And I feel that both sides both preservationists and then also developers always emphasize affordable housing. We need housing, and not just housing, we need affordable housing.
right.
Now that we're past, that we've expanded the boundary, and we're looking at that master plan phase, I mean, I always emphasize that let's not leave that argument. That argument is still the same argument. We need affordable housing. And I know that some conversations and names of, basically that name is somewhat changed from affordable housing to attainable housing. So how do we make sure that it's not just attainable housing, that we go back to making sure that it's affordable housing in that new expansion area or in the areas that were expanded in 1996?
Yeah. The reality is that the idea of expansion areas, which are just naturally going to be at the towards the edges of the county, right, away from the urban core, away from transportation, infrastructure, services, resources, makes it less than ideal to put affordable housing on those peripheries. That's the reality of it. I honestly chafed at some of the arguments at the time about we need to expand so we can build affordable housing. That was not an equals kind of conversation for me. We absolutely need affordable housing, but we need it within the urban service area first, because that is where the service is. Unless you're going to tell me when we build out these areas, we're going to put in workforce housing, affordable housing, easy access to transportation, and all the social services that you need. No food deserts, all your grocery stores, right?
Yeah.
If you could give me this utopian vision of this village center or town center, then absolutely put affordable housing there. That's just not the reality of the way these things are going to get built, right? So it's more than likely in the expansion areas we're going to build market rate housing or workforce housing. The affordable housing is still going to happen mostly within the urban service area, and that's where infill and redevelopment comes in. And then that's where the tensions about preserving neighborhoods or gentrification, those kind of issues come up, right? So I just want to make sure that we don't kind of conflate those issues, because I think all those things are important, but I just don't think the way we're doing it now, that's where affordable housing is going to end up, unfortunately.
Right. And maybe had we had a process that was already in place that could have more so directed to, well, and obviously it's private property, so we can't make anybody do
Right.
what they want on that land, but maybe that could have directed the need for emphasizing affordable housing in other areas rather than just near the urban core, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing, too, is when we went on the Commerce leadership trip earlier in the year to Madison, Wisconsin, one of the things that their mayor and folks talked about was when they were creating certain kinds of housing, they were making sure that it was on major transportation corridors, right, or access to high-speed transportation. And I think they gave either incentives or expedited approvals for developments. So to me, that was smart because they're linking up like, okay, it's all well and good to say we want to make these units affordable, but let's think about the folks that are going to live in there. How are they going to get to work? How are they going to get to services? How are they going to get to the doctor? If you don't think about those things, then sure, you throw the affordable housing out on the edge of the urban service area, right? But it doesn't make sense because people aren't going to be flocking to that because they don't have access to all the other things that kind of they need to make their lives go smoothly. So I think it can be done, but we just have to really link all those chains together.
I think it's being intentional about intentional about all of the resources that are being developed and how it's being developed, and not just building houses and being like people are going to live out there. I didn't get to go to Madison, but one of the things that I did hear from people that were there is how young the average age is there.
Yeah.
This is like young families that are flocking here because it is attainable and it's affordable for them to live here, and they can move around the city very easily.
Well, I will tell you this. I mean, Madison has the same problems we do. They have a really, really small vacancy rate. So they have really high jobs attraction numbers, but these are also folks that are having trouble finding places to live, and they're going further and further out into the edges of Madison as well. So they have a similar problem to us. Nobody's figured this out. This is the thing that you discover.
It's a common
problem. As you talk to different people. Houston, for example, has no zoning laws.
What?
Yeah.
So you-
down there. Yeah,
so
it's crazy.
Yeah, so
It's
you could
bad.
literally build a house next to an apartment, next to a strip club,
That's
next to
crazy.
a car dealership. There's no zoning, right? Now, what that has meant, though, is they've been able to build housing, and their housing crisis isn't as acute as ours or other places, right? They've also made really big inroads on combating homelessness because all the research has shown in recent years that homelessness is a housing
Oh
problem.
yeah, we just had this
100%.
conversation. Yeah.
100%. You strip away the other issues like domestic violence, like substance use disorder, like mental illness, all the other things being equal, housing problem. People are homeless because they can't afford to live in a home. Period. Full stop. So that lack of zoning has created a different kind of ecosystem there for development, which means they can build a lot more housing, which means they're also able to house unhoused folks. But then you look at what does Houston look like when you get there, right? It just goes on forever, ever. What would you call? What would you say? Like Houston's got a great vibe, or like a great like aesthetic, or you know what I mean, right?
You know where you are, huh?
Yeah,
literally.
yeah.
I mean,
So-
we were just there this summer, and you walk out on a block, and you literally take a look and eat one of this apartment building, a single family home, a grocery store, and then a club, and it's
Yeah.
if you step in Houston, you're literally gonna realize like there's no zoning laws at all.
Yeah.
And when we was talking to
Wild.
the council members and leaders up there, and they're like, yeah, you know, it's just free for all.
Yeah.
Which would definitely come with its cons, but I could see, you know, the pros when it comes to the crisis of housing or
Yeah.
in general, when it's trying to put innovative solutions forward to address our brothers and sisters that are unhoused.
That's right.
So
Every way of doing things has its own problems. We have the problems of not enough housing, right? They have the problems of this sort of like mishmash, unintegrated kind of neighborhoods. They have that big sprawling growth. Everybody has to be in a car and drive for hours and hours to get to work. Like they have a different set of problems than we have. So it's always a trade-off. There's no perfect answer that solves all of the problems.
Well, so a little lighthearted question, I guess. If you're always out and about in Lexington, so you are.
Yeah.
We all are, I
For
think.
sure.
Do you have a favorite neighborhood spot, restaurant, park, a place where events take place that you think captures the spirit of the city?
I think it's hard to for one place to capture the spirit of the city because I think the city is so different in different parts of town and it has a variety of sort of vibes and cultures. I'll tell you one of my personal favorites because it's in my backyard. On Southland Drive, throughout the summer, there's the Tall Sound Music Festival. If you didn't know about it, you would never run across it.
Yeah.
It is behind a Mexican grocery store and the Alinka Temple, literally in a back lot that's fenced in. It's just grass most of the time. And people park there. You bring your chairs and your umbrellas and stuff, and you go tuck back there. And that's a music festival that just can't grow any bigger than it is.
Yeah.
It's got the stage. They do, a half dozen shows over the summer. I go there all the time, no matter who's playing. I don't care who's playing.
Yeah.
I'm there for the vibes.
Yeah.
I'm there to like bring a little picnic dinner, hang out with some friends, get some ice cream from the ice cream truck, watch the kids run around and play, listen to bluegrass or folk or reggae or whatever it is. Doesn't matter. And it feels like such a great like neighborhood vibe. Like there are a lot of people just from the area that come to it, but also more and more now attracting people from other parts of town as well. And it's just such a great, like, it doesn't feel commercialized. There's still like a little bit of a Shaggy Dog quality to it,
Yeah.
which is great. And it just, something you can walk to. We load up the wagon with, our food and our chairs and stuff like that and just walk over. It's donation based, so it's pay what you can. And it's just like, it's such a comfortable, like, it's just good vibes.
Just good vibes.
Yeah.
I think it's funny you brought that up because it's probably been going on for a very long time, but I just learned about it last year, and I was like, "Is this like some secret club that only certain people know about?"
Right.
Because I had never been to it or heard of it. But I want to ask Tyler, same question: Is there a place in the city, restaurant, park, or anything that you feel gives Lexington vibes?
yeah, I mean, I think I would go to, I think, the same tune. I think it's a parks. And I think just over the past 2 summers in the same tune, it's been Jazz in the Park at Douglas Park. Just having out, just seeing the crowd, being able to come out, folks from all around that north side of town, just coming with their chairs, picking the chairs, listening to good music, having a good time. And that's exactly how our park should be: active, activated, folks from all different backgrounds, all different ages coming and enjoying themselves. So I would say I would go towards our parks. And making sure, we have a lot of parks, and making sure they're all
we do.
beautiful, making sure they're activated and have programming for all ages.
Yeah.
Yeah, that outdoor space is so important. It's the civic commons, right? It's where people really meet and hang out. It's an equalizing space, right? Nobody's more powerful than somebody else, when you're out playing frisbee or soccer or walking your dog out there.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the stated goals of LPGMP, longest acronym ever, is to make better use of the land we already have. How will this program balance preservation with responsible growth?
The direction that the ordinance language is going in now, before in our first draft, it was if we need land, then we'll either expand or we'll do policy changes or both. We've shifted that emphasis to now let's look at policy first, and then let's go to land, because we know that land use, that expansion question is so contentious, right? So part of me is like, let's not fight that battle first, because we know it's going to be a battle every time we talk about it. Here's the thing that I found: a lot of folks who emphasize preservation for a variety of reasons. What you'll hear is folks say, why are we expanding when we have all this land inside the USA? We need to do infill. And I'm like, great, let's do it. Here's the problem. When we do infill, and very often that's manifested by a zone change hearing, right? When somebody's trying to do it in a neighborhood, a lot of these same folks, and I'm gonna be real honest here, a lot of these same folks, real talk, come out and oppose the new development. So I'm here thinking development's going to happen one of two ways. We either expand and add more land to build on, or we build on the land we have. Those are literally the only two options. You can't oppose both of them, because what that tells me is I'm comfortable where I am. I got mine. Don't let it impact me in any way. And it is really hard for me to reconcile that idea. Unless you want to just come out and say, don't grow in any way. We don't, we're full. No vacancy. Turn back. Lexington is full. We're done. We're happy. We're comfortable. We like what we have. We don't want anybody else to have it. Just come out and say it. Then we can have a real conversation. But that's not what we hear. So with this, the way we're gearing towards it, and I know it's more complicated than that. I've simplified it. So now if we look at infill, potential for infill first. So what does that look like? That looks like us taking a deeper look at what vacant properties look like, right? How do we incentivize, how do we nudge people into developing the undeveloped land we already have? How do we make infill redevelopment easier? I had a conversation earlier today with a first-time developer who is trying to build 32 housing units, very modest, in a new area. He's new to it. This is the first time he's doing it. He's navigating this world. The financing is so complicated, I couldn't begin to explain it. It's expensive.
Right.
And you need help. You need federal money and state money and local money and affordable housing money and these tax credits and those tax credits. And then there's the hurdles of going through the approval process with your development plan, a potential zone change, all the things. I would love for us to create an ecosystem in Fayette County where we nurture and encourage small developers. So we're not dependent on the Ball Homes and the Dennis Andersons and the Webbs and those big players, right? That we have people like this guy that I talked to who's literally just, he wants to do 32 housing units and 2 retail units. That's it, on a 1 acre lot, right? What if we had 1,000 developers like that who are doing small things? Because the difference between them often is these small developers, they live here, right? They're not out of town developers just trying to make a buck, right? They live here, they care about this community, they have other sort of motivations than just making a buck. How do we make that process easier for them so that we can have all these sort of micro developers all over town who have a much better sense of what a neighborhood or community needs, who have relationships and ties to those communities? How do we make it so that it's as easy or easier for them to develop in Lexington as it does a huge company, right? How do we create more AUs and Winterwoods? Those are like two of the only like affordable housing developers who specialize in affordable housing, right? The fact that we have two in Lexington, right? How do we create an ecosystem where there are more people who want to do affordable housing, right? And who can afford to do affordable housing, right? We have to translate our stated values, which we have stated in our comp plan, in all of our guiding documents, right? In with safety, with complete streets, all those different things. How do we make sure our philosophies and values align with our actual policies? We can't tell people we want missing middle housing and then make missing middle housing really hard to develop.
Yeah.
And housing is essentially one of the main topics when it comes to all this.
Yeah.
And when I think about affordable housing, we know home ownership is really that piece that leads to generational wealth.
That's right.
While we have to have units, we have to have all different type of housing. Low income all the way up to workforce, all the way up to just maybe high income housing for some folks. But knowing in the situation we're in right now, the economic bind and all these different things, the only way to get folks out of hard situations or even to get them sustainable and towards some type of generational wealth is home ownership. So when we're thinking forward, when we're thinking about expansion, when we're even thinking about infra redevelopment, how do we start incentivizing home ownership? Because I know right now the big push for affordable housing has just been units. But I feel my philosophy and my thoughts are we have to find a way to start curtailing that towards home ownership.
Yes.
So that we can lead towards generational wealth, so that 10, 15 years down the line, that those same folks that have been going from unit to unit and those rents are just increasing, they're not in a place where they can't afford to get their kids into college, or they can't afford their kids to get to that next level. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's right. Right now, I think it's either 45 or 55%. It's about half and half of our residents are renters, right? Versus
Really?
owners.
It's that big of a...
It's about 50-50.
Wow.
Yeah. That's a really tough nut to crack, because I've thought about it this way. Like I think a lot about like supply and demand with housing, right? So let's say I wave a magic wand and 23,000 housing units appear magically. And let's say they're all for sale.
Yeah.
And let's say they're all under $200,000.
All attainable housing.
Right?
Affordable.
Right.
Attainable, affordable.
So we've done 3 magic wand waves. Now, who's going to buy those houses? If you're a young up and coming couple with a good paying job, 20% down, and a great credit score, you're coming up trying to buy your first house, and suddenly it gets snatched away by an out-of-town developer who wants to turn it into a short-term rental or turn it into investment property. They say, you know what, I'm going to buy this house with no inspection. I'm going to give you 10% over asking, and I'm paying you in cash. If I'm the seller, who am I going to go with? As much as I like this young couple who's trying to start their life, right? And I don't think we as a government can ask the seller, hey, we want you to take less money for the sale of your house, right? That's not fair either.
No.
So how do we balance the scales there? That's a really tough one that I keep thinking about. I think we absolutely need to increase supply. But what happens if that supply doesn't reach the people that need it for home ownership, right?
Yeah.
You can't call a $300,000 home starter home, but that's what it is now in Lexington. Right, you can't get a starter home for $150,000 or $200,000 right now. So where do you start? How do you start when you don't already have the generational wealth that you're literally trying to start building for your kids? That's a really, really tough one that I haven't cracked.
I don't think that anybody's going to be able to crack that.
I think we can. I don't know. I truly believe that we can solve every problem with just two things: creativity, political will. That's it.
100%.
And you can say money, but money is political will.
100%.
If you have the political will, you can spend the money. The creativity part is where I'm stuck on this one. But very often in a lot of these housing solutions, we have the answers. We're just not willing to do them. Right? And that's the political will part. With this one, I don't know if I'm not being creative enough to think about it. Because you can do, different places have done different things where they've done essentially like down payment help for first-time home buyers or for historically marginalized home buyers, for folks who have been redlined for generations. But can you throw money at the problem to solve it? Right? If this investor is saying, I'm going to put 10% extra down to buy this, and then we as government say, okay, you're a nice young couple, you're trying to get your first home, we're going to help you make that difference up. What does that do? That raises property values.
Right.
Because suddenly this $200,000 house is now going for $210,000, and guess what? They're going to offer $215,000 now.
Right.
So can we spend our way to the solution? And how much is it going to take if local government or even state government is giving, $10,000, $20,000 per home buyer?
Yeah.
That's not going to go very far, right?
There'll be a lot of people on that list, huh?
There's a lot of people on that list, and then who do you decide
Right.
gets on that list?
Right.
So, can we, by law, tell a private home seller, you have to look at these folks first before you look at other folks, right? Like, right?
No, right, right. Yeah, I agree. I think that is probably the hardest nut to crack when it comes to housing. But we have different tools, whether it be that affordable housing trust fund, and maybe it's looking at saying, hey, well, maybe this percentage is towards units, but looking at, well, we want to put this amount of percentage towards building houses or home ownerships, like the Marlboro development. We know that's it's going to be multi different folks coming in, whether it be apartment that Habitat for Humanity's building their houses that are home ownership in the front. So that's kind of a balance to say, well, you got these amount of units, but here goes a certain amount of houses that will be available for home ownership, and then making sure that it's connected to certain organizations or programs that are already directly have processes in place to make sure that folks at the certain AMI or folks from certain areas, demographics have access to those houses. And I'm thinking right now in the first district we have the Shropshire project with the housing authority. They threw those houses up pretty quick, and those are some nice houses. Some of them about 3 or 4 of them 4 or 5 bedrooms. Couple of them, one of them a shotgun to 2-bedroom, and the housing authority is trying to be intentional with making sure when they are looking to sell those houses or who they're looking to bring in, that obviously they meet that AMI, or that there's some type of cultural cultural competency within it when coming to the area. So they want to make sure that it's not gentrification.
That's right.
And then to think, and just as we're talking about that Shropshire area, we know that the Hope 6 project in Aspendale, when they knock down the projects out there, what that looks like now. So the Equestrian View looked a little bit different and is a lot different than the folks that originally were living in those projects. But that's because maybe there wasn't intentional sales or intentional outreach to the folks that were living there. And the housing authority is doing a good job of trying to be intentional with that Shropshire project. Yeah. So maybe it's just more intentionality, and like you said, exactly what you said. Political will and innovative, creative thinking is the only way.
Yeah, and you mentioned like the idea of the housing authority, the idea of like the Habitat homes. I love what Habitat does, but how many houses are they building a year? Right, it's like it's dozens, right? So I mean, they're chipping away, right? But it'd be amazing if we could scale up Habitat to the scale where we're building 1,000 units a year, right? Community land trust is another model that has worked in some other places. We only have one little patch of community land trust housing over by Davis Bottom, and that was it. And that was developed, I think, over 10 years ago, and it hasn't really grown in size. And other people have talked about like different models of doing community land trust, that it doesn't have to be just concentrated in one area, that you can kind of do it. But that has its limitations too, right? Like, how do you scale it up? So at this point, maybe the ideas are out there. The question of like, how do you scale up to a point where you can catch up,
Right.
right? Because these solutions are happening, but it's like you're putting teaspoons of water into a bucket that has a pretty big hole in it,
Yeah.
right? And it's hard to catch up.
Yeah. Well, I know that I wouldn't have been able to buy my first home without first-time home buyers down payment and things, because we had no down payment on
Yeah.
our house. But also we got in when the interest rate was 2.75,
Right.
and it's a starter home. We paid
Yeah.
$175,000, and what it would sell for right now, I wouldn't even pay that for it.
Yeah.
But that's because of the houses around us and what they're selling for and stuff. So I do think you can kind of throw money at it a little bit if
Yeah.
you are offering down payment assistance,
Yeah.
and you are looking at minorities and marginalized communities and people who are lower income to meet those qualifications that get the extra boost. I think that does help.
Yeah. And I want people to be kind of honest about where they are, right? Like, I've been helped along the way in my entire life by my parents, right? And I've been helped along the way buying our house together because of both our parents, right? That's generational wealth. I don't consider my parents wealthy in any way, but the fact that they could help us at all in the purchase of a house, not everybody has that,
Nope.
right?
Nope.
And so I want everybody to take a look at their life and kind of acknowledge the kind of privilege, the unearned privilege, right? I didn't earn the fact that my parents could help me,
Right.
right?
They worked hard to be able to help you.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, correct. And my goal is to be able to work hard to help my kids and support them in that way. But a lot of folks don't have that sort of generational support and wealth built partly from previous home ownership, right? So if you can't ever get in the game,
Right.
you can't win the race.
You have a disadvantage. That's correct.
That's right. So right. So it's historic. It's systemic. Recently, we had the premiere of the documentary from Black
Yes,
Yarn.
Resilience and the Red Line in Lexington. Yes.
That's right. And that's been such a great look back at kind of explaining why folks are where they are, not because of individual circumstances, not because of people not trying hard enough. Any of that, literally systemic, literally legislated. People were legislated out of wealth.
Yeah.
And so for us to acknowledge that, and then how do we repair that? How do we walk that back?
It's a big bucket with a spoon that you're trying to fill that big bucket. And then what you just said?
That's right.
That's going to be very hard to go back and repair that.
Yeah.
100%.
But I think, especially we in government, we are the bucket. That's our responsibility to patch it, right? Everybody's trying to fill it a little bit at a time, but we do have the power to say, how did this happen? We can say, we didn't do this. This generation, maybe even the last generation, didn't do this. We didn't create the redlining. We didn't create, nobody alive today, passed the Chinese Exclusion Act that kept, immigrants out of this country, right? But we're responsible for the state that we're in. And, I think the documentary really pointed out very well that, before, when they were explicitly racialized, deed restrictions and redlining and all that stuff, but we've changed it to zoning codes.
Wow.
We've changed it to this neutral language that's race neutral, but it has the same impact. We know it's exactly what it's still doing, right? So to some degree, as messy as Houston is, they got rid of a thing. Do you all know how zoning started? This is a great piece of trivia. In California, after the gold rush and after the building of the railroads, the Chinese migrants in California couldn't really find a lot of other work. One thing that they could do that none of the men in California, white men, wanted to do was laundry. So Chinese men started laundromats, right, doing quote-unquote women's work. Because before that, literally, the miners were shipping their clothes to Hawaii to get laundered to send back because they're men. They're not going to do laundry.
Yeah.
So Chinese men started all these laundries in California, and they started first in Chinatowns. And as they built their wealth, they're like, you know what? A lot of my customers are in this other neighborhood. I'm going to start a laundromat there. The first zoning codes dictated where laundromats could be and ghettoized them back into Chinatown.
Wow.
right?
That started through the whole nation.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah, and so just like when we look at like what is the root of policing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So you can't say this rule is sort of neutral or colorblind
Right.
when you look at its history of what its initial intent was and how it's evolved and devolved, right?
Yeah. This we have went like all the way
That's
like over
right.
here. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
real talk, real change here,
That's
and
right.
hopefully creating real change, and kind of open the door. But we're not gonna walk through it, are we?
Vice Mayor Wu is 100% right.
Yeah.
And I think the main theme of that lane we just went down is that while the past is the past, it's the folks, the leaders right now, it's their responsibility to make the past right.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So where are we at? We're at zoning, but I feel like we've kind of covered that. Well, it asked how we're asked how LPGMP is different from zoning and why it's important for residents to understand that distinction.
Yeah. So LPGMP is basically, it's simply the process by which we determine how we continue to grow and develop in Lexington. Zoning in Lexington is basically, the basic concept of zoning is where can you build what? And it's the idea from a lot of people that you don't want to have, a factory next to a house, right? Or, a factory or industrial is, I-1 or industrial zoning. Business zoning are the B zones and residential is the R zones. And then you have R1, R2, R3, R4, and that dictates density, right? So it's the idea that you don't want a high-rise next to a single-family home, next to a car wash, next to a restaurant, or whatever it is. What's end up happening, though, is that more and more in the last, I would say, 50, 70 years in America, post-World War II, was the development of the suburb happened post-World War II. And so now we're starting to be more and more isolated where there's just big clump of residential and then a big clump of industrial and then a big clump of commercial or retail, right? I don't know that I want to go the Houston model of like where we get rid of zoning. But I really feel like we need more thoughtful and I'll say inclusionary zoning, right? To where we're able to build more. Most of our residential in Lexington is zoned R1. R1 means you can build a single family home. That's it. Not a duplex, not a fourplex, not a small apartment, none of those other things. As you go up, so, R4, and don't quote me on exactly what it includes, but R4, let's say, lets you build a small apartment all the way down to a single family home. So you can build all single family homes in an R4. You just can't build apartments in an R1. It doesn't go the other way around. So, my attitude would be, what if we just zoned all residential zones R4, R5, and let you go as high as you want and also as low as you want, right? And give you those options. Now, there's going to be pushback from the neighborhood, but I think there's a certain level of natural intent to where it would not make sense for you to go to a single-family home district and build a 10-story apartment.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. And most people aren't trying to do that. We're looking for that gentle density. There are a lot of neighborhoods that you'll walk by or drive by, and you'll have to do a double take to realize, oh, that's a duplex.
Yeah.
That looks exactly like a regular house, except, oh, they're two doors. But it doesn't look and feel any different. If you go to like some parts of Kenwick and Chevy Chase, where they have those like old houses that have been turned into fourplexes, right? They look like just a part of the neighborhood. It doesn't look garish. It doesn't look out of control at all. That's kind of what we're looking for, because it's the same amount of land that you would put a single family home on, except you can house 4 households on it. That's the level of density that we really need. And I'll be honest too, like our downtown, we need some more high rises. We need some more density for the people who want to live downtown in that dense environment. When we were in Madison, they said their downtown houses, I think, upwards of like 20,000 people.
Wow.
And I'd be surprised if we have 2,000 people
Really?
living downtown. Because there's Park Plaza, there's, I don't know the names of them, they're like literally just a couple other apartment buildings downtown. The rest are hotels and offices, right? And Madison's downtown is constrained by water on two sides. There's this little skinny strip of land. We don't have the same constraints. We're constantly trying to define and redefine our downtown boundaries. Right now, we're starting the downtown area master plan.
Right.
So one of the key questions is, what is downtown, right? We've had different definitions of it. So does downtown go all the way out to Manchester?
Yeah.
Does it go out to National? Does it go up to Castlewood? Does it go down to campus? Or is it just Main Street and Vine Street up to Midland and, Jefferson, right? How do we define it?
I'd
And
be
for what
interested to see that. Like,
yeah, I am too.
Yeah.
And we did an exercise in some of their stakeholder meetings. They had maps in front of us where we could ourselves draw what we think downtown is. And I looked around and everybody had a different interpretation.
I'm sure.
You know? And so do you include it downtown just because it's geographically kind of central? Or are you trying to purposely, like if you go all the way out to National, like you could argue that's a little far flung
Yeah.
to be downtown. But it's a vibrant commercial strip, right? And then you get into, well, what about the Met? What about the East End? How far out do we stop at Newtown or Oliver Lewis? Do we keep going to Manchester because there's another sort of vibrant commercial strip there? What are we looking to do? So that's a really interesting question.
So on to public engagement. The second draft proposal of LPGMP will be presented into the General Government and Planning Committee on September 9th, followed by the public forum on September 16th. What should residents expect from those meetings?
Yeah, so on the 9th, at the General Government Planning Committee meeting, we're going to, planning staff is going to present the second draft, and it's going to have the actual ordinance language of what we're trying to do. And again, I think I want everybody to go into it with an open mind to know that this is not set in stone. This is literally being presented so people can respond to it, criticize it, poke holes in it, make it better. And then on the 16th, we'll have a forum basically in chamber. So we don't call it a hearing because we're not making a decision at the end of it.
Okay.
We just want to hear from the public. So the public should certainly watch either in person or on Lex TV or on Lex TV archives after the fact, watch that presentation, and then show up on the 16th and give us your opinions. And we'll have probably something else going on relating to this. This is an item right now on our Engage Lexington platform, which is the best place for everybody to go to for like major issues that we've worked on. Things like the budget, short-term rentals, things like that have been on Engage. So that's the best place to kind of take a look and give us your opinion, because it is really important. I don't think we as government, at least I know you and I don't want ever to say like, oh, here's what we're doing for you, the people.
Yeah.
Right? We need to find out what people really care about, what their concerns are. And something to keep in mind too, like we did a couple of surveys for LPGMP. The last survey we did had about 150 respondents from all 12 districts, right? Is that a big enough sample size to say this is the feelings of Lexington, Kentucky? No, it's not, right?
Yeah.
And if your district, different districts had different participation. If your district, let's say, had 12 people and 8 of them were upset about something, we have to be really cautious to say, my district is upset about something.
Right.
It's like, no, 8 people.
Yeah.
And the thing I think a lot about input, too, is who's coming to the website, who's coming to the events. Is it the usual people who are so kind of keyed into everything we do, what I like to call the usual suspects, the folks that we see a lot in chambers and at these events? And I love that they're engaged, right?
Yeah.
But are they representative of the greater community, or are they just the people who show up? So we always need to do a better job of engaging with people who are disengaged. And my metric for success whenever we have like an Issues Expo or a community preview or a public event, if I see more faces I don't know than I do know, that's a success to me, right? I want new people engaged, and I want to know, how'd you hear about this? Why are you here? Why do you care about this, right? And if we can keep growing that base, then we can actually collect real data.
Yeah.
Right. I want to, because I didn't mention it earlier, but I think this is a very cool document that highlights, the whole step 1 through 5 So let's do this real quick. We're almost in it. We're almost done, I promise.
Okay.
But let's go to this document. And
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is on Engage Lexington.
Yeah.
Can be found in many different places.
Yep.
Why don't you take them through step 1 through 5 quickly of
Okay.
what this
let
looks
me
like?
let me take a look at it and make sure I do this right. So in between our comp plans, either a year or two after we've gone over the comp plan, we do a needs assessment, needs study. That assessment, done not by LFUCG, by an outside organization, will basically say how many years of housing land do we have, right? So two things will happen. One is they'll give us a number over 20 or under 20. So if they say we have enough land for housing for 22 years of housing, then cool. Then it gets presented, either way they get presented to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission will then recommend policy or regulation changes. Comes to the council, we can do with it what we want. We can alter it, we can reject it, we can adopt it. If they say we only have 15 years of housing land or 18 years of housing or 19 and a half years of housing land, they do the same thing. They make recommendations to policy and regulation, and or they could recommend we need to expand the urban service area. That's the other option. Comes to council again, we can agree with it, reject it, alter it, and then pass it. If we say yes, we do want to do, and I think, I don't want to misspeak here. I think either way, we have the option of doing a vacant land look back to see how much land is there, before we consider expansion. Can we make better use of the land that exists?
Yeah.
They do the vacant land review. This is mostly through Planning Commission. They create a subcommittee, do that, and they could potentially recommend this piece of land that's on the edge of the urban service area. It's been there forever. It's not been developed. We're going to remove it from the existing urban service area, which will change our math a little bit, right? Or they recommend that we don't. And then from there, if we determine that we're going to expand the urban service area, then the Planning Commission will start receiving requests from people outside the urban service area. And again, we're not hopscotching, so if the urban service area line is here, and there's a landowner right here, we don't accept that application. It has to be adjacent to the current current boundary, right? So they would start taking sort of applications and kind of accepting or rejecting people who want to be brought in, and then they go through the master planning process, zoning process, just like we always would. So it's kind of convoluted, but it's better than having no system, certainly. And then there's a whole separate thing. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but we have this other kind of separate process where we're looking specifically at job creation land, and that's going to be its own special process that's not tied to this time frame, so that in any moment, council or the mayor's administration can say, there's a big company that's interested in bringing their home office here and creating 400 jobs, but they need land. So how do we consider that? So it's a separate process.
Cool. And it's fair to say that, so September 9th, this process that you just discussed, that's in this great sheet, will be discussed by the planning staff
That's right.
at that presentation.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
So, and then lastly, with public input, why is public feedback so important at this stage, and how can residents make sure their voices are heard?
Yeah, I think it's really, really important for us to hear, even though we're not looking at it as sort of quantifiable data in that sense, because we're not getting, thousands and thousands of responses. It's still really important to hear what are the challenges and what are the issues, because a lot of the voices that are outspoken on these issues, they represent certain contingencies or certain sort of folks in our community. So because we're doing not only public input, but we've been engaging with stakeholders, folks like Fayette Alliance or Commerce Lexington or Builders Association, things like that. We've been gathering input from all these different interested parties to make sure, does this make sense? Does this work for you? What is the challenge here? What are you trying to get out of it? Why could this be better? You know what I mean? And kind of keep tweaking it. And again, even when we pass the quote final product, to me, it's still not going to be perfect.
Right.
And we know that. but we have to get started somewhere, and we can always kind of change and tweak. So for me, I'm just excited to have a plan
Yeah.
and to move it forward. And I think we're taking as, we're not in a rush. We're well under the original deadline that the council set for this process. So if things get really hairy and we need to make more changes, it could potentially push past December. But we're trying to see if we can present the final draft in, I think, December 2nd.
Okay.
Cool. And then one of the last wraps up, if you could give residents one reason to pay attention to LPGMP and get involved in the process, what would it be?
If they care about what Lexington is going to be for their children, then they should care about this process.
Right. And I think that'd probably be the similar answer to the
Last
last
question,
question.
yeah.
What gives you the most hope about Lexington's future right now? And in growth, tied to growth, I get you that.
I think people are starting to realize that Lexington is no longer the small town that they thought it was or that they grew up in. I think that's one of the beauties and charms of Lexington is that we're a mid-sized city of 329,000 people that a lot of people still think is a small town. And I love the small town charm. I love the relationships. I love the everybody knows everybody vibes. Those are all the good things. And so much of what you can get done in this town is relational and being in community. The bad part is people will say like, oh, we shouldn't have like this much traffic, or what about parking? And it's like, okay, those things are all legitimate when you're talking about a small town of 80,000 people, but we're a city of 329,000 people. That's a different scale. Like people who are opposed to like apartment buildings, for example. It's like, sure, in a little, in Mount Sterling, they probably don't have a bunch of tall apartment buildings, but we're not that. We're a mid-sized city, and we need to start planning and acting like it. So I think people are starting to realize that sort of discrepancy and kind of thinking about things in a new way. And it makes me hopeful, honestly, that we have a very young and very new council who are willing to like push outside of the box and think about new solutions. And I think you and I, at least, and certainly some of our other colleagues, like, we don't buy into the argument of like, oh, we do this because this is how it's always been done.
Right.
Like, I outright reject that argument for anything,
Yeah.
right? It literally is like, okay, but is it working?
Yeah.
Is it working today? It worked back in the 90s. Is it working right now? If not, let's change it.
Yeah.
And I think we have the willingness and the energy to change that. So.
Right. I think you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what gives me hope, that we have a council, we have leaders right now in place that are thinking intentionally, that are thinking responsibly, and looking across the board, not just for one side or the other, looking at undervalued communities and the needs for them, looking at the needs for all of our community, and understanding that we have to grow responsibly and intentionally. And
That's
I think
right.
that's the main point. So as that, we'll wrap it on up. Oh, I get to start the outro. Cool. So, Vice Mayor Wu, thank you for joining us and breaking down such a big, complex topic in a way that everyone can understand.
Remember, the second draft of LPGMP will be presented at the General Government and Planning Committee on September 9th, and there's a public forum, not input session, on September 16th where you can share your thoughts. These are big opportunities for Lexington residents to shape the future of our city.
This has been Real Talk, Real Change. I'm Tyler Morton alongside Adina Tatum. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay engaged, stay informed, and keep working for positive change here in Lexington.